Pandemic is similar to a skyfall and the BFSI CEOs are dealing with it digitally, from front end to back end. And home to cloud, they have been engaging in technology aggressively to avoid future disruptions. This session will explore how BFSI CEOs are building fundamentals digitally. How are they building the future business on various digital platforms? I would like to invite Amol Dete, editor ET BFSI, to moderate the panel discussion on the topic BFSI CEOs dealing with the skyfall digitally. Over to you, Amol.
Hello and welcome to ET BFSI CXO Conclave. Uh, I'm going to discuss dealing with the skyfall digitally in this first panel discussion of today. And I'm glad to share with you that I have the top leaders from the BFSI sector with me, and I take pride in introducing them to you. My first speaker today is Mr. Ajay Kanwal, MD and CEO, Jonas Small Finance Bank. Mr. Kanwal, welcome to the show. My next speaker is Mr. Atul Sahai, CMD, New India Assurance Company Limited. Mr. Sahai, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amol. Thanks for having me here.
My next speaker is Mr. Dinanath Dubhashi, MD and CEO, L&T Finance Holdings. Mr. Dubhashi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amol.
And my last speaker for the panel is Mr. J. Venkatramu, MD and CEO, India Post Payment Bank. Mr. Venkatramu, welcome to the show. So, gentlemen, I'm really glad to have all of you here. And to begin with, Mr. Kanwal, I will ask you a straightforward question. Maybe I will take opening remarks from all of you. And the topic that we are discussing today is, dealing with the skyfall digitally. Why we are discussing this topic is, the pandemic or the lockdown or whatever the challenges that we have faced in last 7-8 months are similar to skyfall. And that's why we named it, how are you dealing with this skyfall or the turbulence time? So after 8 months, if Mr. Kanwal, if you could tell us, after 8 months, how are you dealing with the implications of COVID-19 and how do you see the future ahead?
So, Amol, actually, if you see the 8 months, not much has changed from a pandemic perspective, right? So we were at risk of getting infected in March and April, and we're under the same risk today. There is no vaccine either. And fundamentally, we do believe that probably the hospitals and doctors are more ready to address issues than they were in March. So I think that's one change. So I think what's really happened in 8 months is our minds have got aligned to live with a bit of risk. And frankly, this is not a risk you and I would normally like to live with. But given that 8 months have elapsed, life has to go on, economy has to run. And the implication of an economic downturn is far more severe. I think we'll learn to live with risk. So my take on 8 months is it's a severe lesson for all of us. But fundamentally, to me, not much has changed from how we need to operate, whether it was April or it is December. I still think we have to be as serious about the COVID crisis as never before, actually.
Okay, I think a valid point that we have to be more serious than ever before. Mr. Sahai, I would like to take your views. How has been these 8 months for you and how do you see the future ahead?
8 months have been difficult, but we have been fortunate that we could somehow pull off very good performance. We are already in the last month of the year. So we have done so far very well. And we hope that we go on from here, continuing from here. But unless the overall economy improves, the sector improves, so the kind of growth we used to see, the kind of services we are known to provide, those levels are yet to be achieved because it is coming in way. What has changed in these 8 months, maybe a little bit of perspective has changed. People have become accustomed to this. Yes, it is there. We got to live with it. So initially, if you just look at the first quarter, there was quite a bit of panic. The whole industry came to a grinding halt or something. So now things are improving. And as we go ahead, possibly there are lot many things will happen. But what has happened in these months, that possibly most of the companies have got lots of digital confidence, which possibly they earlier lacked because they were not left with any other alternative. So this digital confidence is going to be handy going forward. And I commend you for choosing a very, very apt title, Dealing with the Skyfall. You really need James Bond's brilliance to overcome these difficult periods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sai. So I can say that I have four James Bond sitting beside me, and in fact, let's talk and discuss the, Skyfall. Yes, valid points, Mr. Sai, and digital has improved, escalated a lot in the at least BFSI sector, a lot. Mr. Dubhashi, if I come to you, you're operating in NBFC space and also catering to rural market. What is your view? How has you dealt with
So it's
dealt in last 8 months, and how do you see the future?
yeah, actually, Mr. Sahai took away the bang from my opening because I was going to talk about James Bond. But let me take it on. Actually, I think exactly opposite. That Skyfall was a James Bond movie, and the one way to deal with this crisis is by not being a James Bond. We believe that, and taking a few steps back, companies who were ready by getting the principles and the fundamentals right, the first principles right, have been the company who have done well, who have recovered faster. I'm not saying anybody would be ready for a pandemic, no doubt. Yeah. But if you have done the basics well, let me talk about NBFC. What is needed to have a good NBFC? Number one, liquidity. Number two is asset quality. Number three is the profitability, and then growth. If these four, if you mistake them and put them in a different order, put growth first or put something else first before liquidity, you will come to grief. Companies who have remembered this order, which is the first principles, have been the companies which have come out of the pandemic much better than others. Yes, it did everybody sweat. Oh, I'm sure everybody sweated, including large companies like us. We did sweat in April, May, but we could come out better than others, right? On a very different perspective, I think another couple of things have changed. This has got a sense of gratitude amongst a lot of people. The first thing that I must say on this call is not only our staff, but staff of all the companies in the BFSI sector, which have been risking their lives literally for the last 6 to 7 months. I think as leaders, our first duty today is to thank them for having the sector where it is and having recovered out of the pandemic. And they have genuinely put their lives at risk. So this sense of gratitude has come. What has changed in the last 8 months? I would, this is my war cry to my team, and I would repeat it here, that, pandemic was there, is still there, but take good care, but remove the fear of pandemic from your heart. Pandemic के डर को दिल से निकाल दो, लेकिन जो सीख मिली है pandemic से, उसको कभी दिमाग से मत निकालो, कभी भी नहीं. And that would be my takeaway from the last 8 months.
I think a very, very interesting takeaway, Mr. Dubhashi, and I will go to Mr. Venkat Ramu right now. Mr. Venkat Ramu, please, could you share your view on the last 8 months of implications and how do you see the future?
Sure, Amol, thanks. Thank you so much. I think the pandemic has really taught us very valuable lessons, and especially in the context that we normally tend to take certain things for granted. And possibly pandemic has taught us the other way around, how to deal with not to take things for granted. But having said that, I think the way the entire BFSI sector has come forward, and the frontline warriors, so-called frontline warriors, have come forward in continuing the services in spite of the risk posed by the pandemic is very, very commendable. And what we really observed in the last 8 months is that it definitely has opened up a lot of opportunities. As my predecessors has rightly pointed out, that the digital adoption of consumers has increased a lot, and that is one positive takeaway from this. Where we could see that the ability of people to transact digitally, the digital literacy has gone up. I mean, it could be by way of force or whatever that you can attribute to, but nevertheless, it has increased. And we feel that this momentum and this will continue in the years to come for good. the adoption will continue. And more importantly, what we have seen is that this being an essential service, we have seen a lot more increase in the volume of transactions, especially in our case where we serve the last mile. The last mile connectivity provided by our frontline people has really enabled in availing services like Aadhaar-enabled payment systems, where a lot of government benefits have been withdrawn without any interruption. And that is one of the aspects which has really increased the volumes, and it has increased the volumes from what we were doing it previously. And thankfully, we were able to continue that good work. And also it has created a lot of awareness. So that way, I think it has, it's a mixed bag. It has both positives as well as negatives. If we keep aside the negatives, I think we have a lot of positives to learn from the whole pandemic. Thank you.
Right. I think valid thoughts. And now, let me, try to, shift the gears and be more specific about your banks, about your company, and about the sector. So, Mr. Kanwal, if you could tell me more about the credit strategy that the banks are following right now. I have seen first the banks were facing a lot of problem with the liquidity. Then they raised the liquidity, but still they were very unsure about disbursing credits to anybody and everybody. So have you revised your credit strategy? What kind of credit strategy have you adopted?
I think a couple of things, Amol. I think liquidity has always been good, and thanks to the measures taken by RBI, it got even better. So I think the first level of challenge was very easily resolved. I think 2-3 things which are very crucial. One is many borrowers don't wish to borrow because they themselves are uncertain about the demand. And we are referring in this case to business borrowers. If you go back into May, June, July, even retail borrowers were not sure whether they should take their home or they should wait to buy the home when things end. And I think they've come out much better in September, October, I must say. So there was a lack of demand both at the retail end and certainly at the business end. And rightfully so. Even our good borrowers who continued paying through the crisis didn't want to borrow even if we went to them because they really didn't know when to stock up or expand and do more with the money. I think post September, things have got better in terms of people have started coming out, things have started moving. Here comes the challenge, So if you take a normal business who has got little or no turnover in the last 6 months, if you try and assess his working capital needs or you try and see his business profitability and future, you won't get a good answer. Then what you would try and do is impute last year and say, assuming he comes back, how will he look? If you did that, you're not very sure whether he'll come back with the same level or will it be higher or slightly lower. So I think there is a level of sensibleness the bankers will have to use when they assess the businesses. I do think demand has come back, but at least from what I see, it's roughly about 60-70% of what it used to be on a pre-COVID level.
Okay.
I don't think so the need to rush too much right now for everybody. I think both for borrowers, they need to be more careful about where are they going to spend their rupees. And for banks to be very well, we have to be very careful of how we assess the working capital need. Same on the retail side. I mean, we are in the microfinance business. There is a demand, but I think one has to be careful how you expand. So my bias is we have changed strategies on how we read the bureaus, how we reach the turnovers, and that is required for the moment. But fair to say that we are more conservative than we were on a pre-COVID basis.
Okay, I think the conservative stand is very important, Mr. Kanwal. Mr. Sahai, you're the largest insurance company in the country, and till now, obviously, motor and health were the major growth engines. But we have seen a lot of issues with the economy, specifically in the auto sector, and auto took a hit. Yes, there is some slight improvement, but considering whatever the changes that has happened in the sector, now how do you see the world of insurance business, specifically post-pandemic? Are customers looking at insurance very positively, specifically what happened with the COVID and the pickup in the health insurance policies?
Look, it has got quite a bit of impact as far as it has pandemic, though very unfortunate thing, but it has helped in increasing the awareness about insurance. We have seen a spurt in people trying to get medical insurance, so there is a definite growth. But as far as the other insurance is concerned, I suppose you would agree with me, it depends on the general condition of the economy also. For instance, Look, we are the biggest insurer, and of course, even during this pandemic period, we delivered wonderful performance. We gave some 1,500 crore profit. So, but still, if you just look at my clientele, I do all the aviation. All the aviation players are insured by us. The major shipping, cargo, motor, everything is done by us only. So these sectors themselves are in quite a bit of trouble. Aviation is yet to limp back to its normalcy, that kind of thing. So it has its impact. So health alone cannot compensate for the losses of all the sector. But what has happened that we have managed to grow, though very not very significantly, but still in the face of the fact where the general insurance industry itself has gone down by quite a bit of percentage, we managed to grow. That itself is very commendable. It just goes on to show the kind of effort we put in our digital infrastructure. We already had our digital infrastructure, but I must clarify here. We are a country where we have got all sorts of segments of population. We have what, as you call it, digital immigrants and digital native, and we also have digitally challenged guys. So what happens in this kind of atmosphere, I have to have my marketing team or otherwise who can reach to all these three segments. What we have been able to do is that we could manage to reach out to all these three segments, and therefore we could retain as much business as possible. And again, as an insurance company, which my other co-panelists may not be facing the situation, we are having a large number of COVID claims. So these claims, of course, they are upsetting financially. So it has, in fact, it has been offset a little bit. You would remember that especially in the first quarter, there was hardly any vehicular traffic. Since there was no vehicular traffic, there was no accidents also. So the motor claims came down in the first quarter. I'm talking of the first quarter itself. So therefore, we could manage it. So had these things operated, both the things simultaneously, COVID claims in addition to the normal type of motor claims, then things could have gone bad. So anyway, we are trying to reach out to our customers. This digital infrastructure we already had in place. And thanks to my digital team, possibly somehow no one could foresee about the pandemic, but they did see that it was so very necessary to augment our capacities that we did. And possibly that paid handsome dividends. So we've succeeded in reaching out to people.
Mr. Dubhashi, tell me something about the current changes, challenges that you are facing while disbursing the loans. Because at one side, the demand from the borrower is really high, specifically for the NBFCs, I can see, for the business loans from the SMEs, MSMEs. But you have to be also very, very cautious because you do not know whether the borrower will come back or whether his business will be significantly improved in next 6 to 9 months or 12 months. So how are you actually dealing with the current market in terms of disbursing the loans?
So here I will want to clarify something. We have just announced a rights issue. So I won't be able to make any specific statement about my company, which is not there till September. So my lawyers have very clearly told me that when they came to know that I am coming on this program. But let me talk generally about the sectors that we are in, right? We are mainly in rural, infra and housing. And rural clearly, not only because of the cyclical part. I mean, cyclical part, definitely 109% of normal monsoon, 3 continuous good monsoons, reservoir levels at 107% of normal. This is all publicly available data. Sowing of the Kharif crop 5% above the long-term average. These are huge numbers which can change the rural economy drastically. But these are only the cyclical parts. There are also systemic changes in the rural economy, which have happened because and are likely to happen. I mean, based on this, revision of the farm laws, just simple things like toilets being available, medical insurance being available, medical facilities being available. What has been seen in the rural areas is when the farmer has a surplus, it doesn't go, the portion going to necessities is coming down drastically because many of those necessities are being taken care of. I'm talking generally, I'm not talking about specific areas, specific farmers. And because of that, I would believe that leave out the cyclicality, we are going to see over the next 5 to 10 years, good increase in the rural demand. Demand for credit, demand for goods, and because of that, demand for credit. The second thing which is happening in rural is the other part of digital. When we talk digital, we normally talk connectivity, internet, etc. There is other part of digital, which is data analytics. And just availability of reliable, publicly available data and the tools to analyze them have gone up so drastically over the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, I can geotag each one of my customers, each one of my people, and monitor how they're, how my people are moving, whether they are following the route they have been given. So the certainty has increased so much because of lot of data availability that we believe that generally in rural demand, in Mr. Nandan Nilekani's words, a WhatsApp movement in rural demand is maybe 5 years away.
Mr. Venkatramu, I can understand the big benefit that your bank, IPPB has because of the India Post. I mean, you're actually using the infrastructure of more than, I think, 150,000 post offices that we have in the country. And, I was actually going through a lot of initiatives that you launched in this lockdown period. Maybe some of them directly came from the central government also. My point to you here is, considering the growth that you have seen specifically in the payments bank segment and the initiatives that you launched, how long, how sustainable these initiatives are, whether the doorstep banking service, whether the Aadhaar enabled payments that you're offering, how sustainable these initiatives are for the payments bank like you?
See, one of the fact that you must consider in all these cases is the ever-growing rural demand. For instance, as you rightly pointed out, we have a huge network of post offices that are there in the country, and predominantly 120,000 of them present in rural areas, and especially in those areas which are not even banked. So given that fact, you're actually enabling doorstep banking. So it's actually a paradigm shift of banking in terms of access to banking. So on one end, if you see that there's been no access to banking for some of these centers, and with us coming into the picture, it actually reversed. The scenario actually reversed. So in a way, we are able to reach out to all those places and take banking to all those places where traditionally banks never existed. I think that's the biggest takeaway of the payment bank initiative made by the India Post Payment Bank. So from that aspect, I think from here it's only going to increase. And as far as insofar as the initiatives of government that are concerned, we've recently launched a digital life certificate. And let me tell you, it has actually received an overwhelming response across the country. And given the fact that there's already a pandemic which is ongoing, and added to that, if somebody can go to the residence of a pensioner and then provide him the life certificate, digital, that is also digitally enabled life certificate, I think that's a real boon. And in fact, I've been receiving a lot of positive responses from the people that this is one of the best services that we can ever expect from India Post, and that has really helped. And on one end, because of pandemic, people are not able to step out, and this has helped. So this is definitely going to sustain. And what we are also going to extend this is that wherever we are going and extending these services, they can also avail doorstep services. Who otherwise will have to, senior citizens will have to step out for withdrawing pensions. Either they have to go to ATM or a bank branch for withdrawing cash. Now that is not required. They can directly get the postman to deliver cash right at the doorstep. I think these are all very, very important initiatives. And thanks to the digital infrastructure which is already created. If you look at the kind of digital infrastructure that we have in terms of JAM Trinity, or the kind of infrastructure that the government has created, I think we are well prepared for these kind of pandemic situations insofar as payment ecosystem is concerned.
Mr. Kanwal, the big benefit that you and obviously the IPPB has is you are the new banks, just started like 3-4 years back. So you actually built your bank on a digital infrastructure. But still, we have seen a lot of banks now moving absolutely towards automation. So what part of businesses do you or are you putting on automation at your bank right now?
Samal, we were all, like you rightly pointed out, all new banks had no baggage. And so all of us began with a fully digitized mode. And if you have a background like we did in a microfinance business, you really can't book 1.5, 2 lakh loans a month if you're doing it on paper. So you really have to be digitized. And so obviously our focus on getting everything digitized is very high. Wherever possible, we are putting automated processes or putting robots in so that things get much more easier and quicker. All our frontline people are on tabs or on mobiles when it comes to collections. So in a way, we have strengthened that during COVID. I think the challenge we face in our business, which is at the bottom end of the pyramid in at least 80-90% of what we do, is there is so much cash in the ecosystem. So when we do go for collections, you have no choice but to collect cash. While about 10 to 15% has now moved to non-cash, which is really a big change, I must say. COVID has driven much more digitization than it was originally envisaged. Had there been no COVID is what I mean. But still, there's a lot of ground to cover. And I think one place which we still struggle with is on the collection side in cash, largely to do with the cash economy. That hasn't gone away. It's coming down gradually, but really there's a big job to be done there.
Okay, so cash is still a king.
Aman, in fact, just to add to Ajay's point, I think while on one side, we were able to solve the cash coming from urban to rural centers. Okay, I think the biggest problem to solve is the collections part. And as he rightly pointed out, we are also looking at that as one area in terms of digitizing that part of collections.
So, Mr. Sahay, I will come to you specifically on the digital. My question to you is not about whether you are adopting digital or going online. Obviously, it is going to be there. But being the largest PSU insurance company in the country, how are you facing the challenges? How are you dealing with the challenges while adopting digital at such a big and a large company where you have to also deal with some cultural issues?
Yes, there are cultural issues. But as far as those cultural issues are concerned, I think I already mentioned, because I said, no, there are three kinds of people, like digital native, digitally challenged, and this thing goes digital immigrants. As far as our own people are concerned, they also come in the category, quite a few of them come in the category of digital immigrants. So that is it. But let me tell you, as far as we, maybe PSU or whatever, as on date, earlier last year I did some 25% of my business online. This year I am doing something like 28% online. So that would go on to show that we are already very, very digital savvy company. And I did mention that we had made lots of investment in digital infrastructure. We augmented it well. So that is what came handy. And we are very well equipped with this. And then as far as this new officers are concerned, we have recruited, we have got lot many young, bright IT officers we have got. So they are onto this job 24/7. So I would say, I do not know, it is not good to compare, but I would say that we are very well equipped and we are very efficient as far as our digital operations are concerned. They do not pose much challenges. Digital is very good thing. It is a bright thing because it is going to reduce the expenses also. But please understand that digital itself cannot be sufficient to replace every other mode. People do need certain personal comfort also.
So how do you plan your strategies now going ahead? How do you look at the business when we do not know what is going to happen? What is your overall perspective towards next 2 to 3 quarters?
Next 2 to 3 quarters, I think we are going to do well, because look, things cannot go worse, because we have already seen the kind of disruptions we have. Of course, the approach has changed to a certain extent. You know, the earlier year we were talking about business was based on disruptions. Now we are talking of BAU, business as usual. So as long as these times, they'll last. So we'll try to keep business as usual. But this is the lowest that is happening. Things can only improve from here, because we are able to reach out as far as we are able to secure all our renewals. And then we are reaching out, and as I shared earlier with you, there is lots of awareness about insurance especially as far as health is concerned. Vehicular traffic is coming back, and if at all there were any defaulters who did not do their insurance, motor insurance, they're also going for it. I understand that now even the auto sales are picking up. Only thing I am waiting that this aviation and other sectors also pick up. Because now what is happening, that even the major industries like aviation and shipping, they are seeking, like if they could pay insurance premium in installment, which is not a very regular feature of general insurance. So what is happening now, in times to come, things can only improve.
So, Mr. Dubhash, I will come to you. And we have seen major changes specifically in the NBFC sector in the last 2, 3 years. I'm not specifically talking about the frauds and, whatever those changes, major challenges that happened. But NBFC has still not recovered a lot, okay, as a sector. And when we look at the Skyfall, that was a more addition to it. So do you think now the top companies, at least specifically in the NBFC category, have recovered enough to, to cross the another ladder?
I don't know what you mean by another ladder,
Mm-hmm.
but let us just take one by one those factors, right? The first, which I mentioned, first liquidity. Since you are talking about the top companies, I think most definitely most of the top companies were not in liquidity crisis. As I said, yes, everybody was sweating, no doubt. But even that now, thanks to various measures taken, the top NBFCs, I think we can say that that is a question of the past. Right? Also, we will remember that this is not the first time that the NBFC sector has faced it in the last 4 years, right? There was first demonetization, then okay, GST was not perhaps that much worse, but then there was the ILFS crisis, and then now this. And I believe the sector has emerged perhaps stronger. I mean, I have said it in some panel before this, that perhaps the sector as a whole has ILFS crisis to thank for. Because till ILFS crisis, there were so many companies who were running a negative ALM gap in the first 1 year. Leave out the top 10 NBFCs, most of them were running. And because of the ILFS crisis, everybody was running, after that, stopping from running negative gaps in the first 1 year and always having a positive gap. Just imagine if large amount of NBFCs, large number of NBFCs were running negative gaps in the first 1 year in February, March, what would have happened? There would be blood on the ground, right? And there has been no blood on the ground. I mean, difficulties, etc., leave it. On 27th of March, NBFCs were told that April and May at least, then it went till August, that your cash inflows can be potentially zero, right? Because of the moratorium. And your outflows have to be potentially the same. And by the way, you're not a bank, so you don't have a lender of last resort. This is in effect what all NBFCs were told. And how many NBFCs actually defaulted? Zero. Right, in the last 6 months. And which gives me great confidence that not only the top 10, which we belong to, but the sector as such is coming of age. Right? Yes, obviously, things can be better. We'll keep asking for more things, but it is coming of age. And everybody has done great efforts. My government has done, RBI has done great efforts in controlling, in monitoring, making sure that nothing goes wrong. But you have to give the sector its due that there has been no default. And okay, there have been defaults because of asset side issue, a couple of companies, but not because of liquidity during the COVID time. So certainly that is something which I would think behind us as the NBFC sector. As far as just specific digital is concerned, I believe in one thing very firmly, that anybody who has started talking digital, data analytics, etc., after the pandemic will not succeed. It is all going back to fundamentals. If you believed in digital and data analytics before, if you believed that that is the way of doing business, then you have done well, better than others during the pandemic. You can't be a company which will suddenly discover the beauty of digital and data analytics. In the last 6 months, you wouldn't even be off the ground yet, right? It takes much more time to implement anything. What we have always stopped short of doing is thinking of digital only as a way to reach clients. Digital should touch every aspect of the P&L, and it should, it should generate good customer experience so that to get more business. It should generate good cross-selling to get fees. It should generate better productivity to reduce expenses. And most importantly, it should generate good collection data analytics to reduce cost of credit, right, or provisions. And that's the first thing we believed. And that is why, while all those challenges that in the rural sector about digital reach remain, we have concentrated on what is possible and not cried about what is not possible. What is not possible, not possible. Right. And as as Mr. Kanwal also said, things are improving rapidly. Yeah. So let's not concentrate on what is not possible.
Great. Mr. Venkatramu, when I saw a lot of payment companies came into the picture, many of them also, what you can say, withdrew their licenses because they could not do well in this particular space. But you, whether you have a support of India Post or you're a government-owned entity, that's a different story. You have been adding a lot of, flowers in your bouquet. How beneficial and how sustainable? Again, I'm talking about the profitability because other payment banks could not sustain. Is it for you specifically? And what are the new flowers are you going to add going ahead? Because I can see that the future of the specifically payment bank is you can add more flowers, then only will blossom, right?
Yeah. So as a payment bank, conceptually, if you look at Amol, is that payment bank basically provides the rails for banking access. I mean, even the regulator envisaged payment banks as provider of banking services to the last mile, and that's the way the whole Nachiket Board's committee conceptualized and came up with. Unfortunately, there are not many options, especially for the banking not many products that are profitable for you to really go and provide. But having said that, with a growing opportunity, especially on services like credit and insurance. In fact, we've seen a good uptake of insurance products in the last few months. I mean, it's too early for us to really draw any conclusions on that. One is insurance, the other is credit, which is both agri-related credit and collections. That's going to be one of the key sector which we'll be focusing on in terms of helping various credit providers, right? I mean, on behalf of various lenders, it could be NBFCs, it could be banks. And more importantly, there are also a lot of fintechs who are coming into this space in terms of creating a value-added platform. So that apart, we've also seen some of the new disruptive changes in terms of new products that are coming into picture. Electronic procurement, like for instance, procurement of agri-produce is something where probably our bank can make a addition. So similarly, in the non-financial sector, especially on the health and education sector, that we can provide as a service. I think that is something which we can look at. So apart from the financial services, on the non-financial part, there are a lot of government-related schemes and a lot of government-related interventions, which again, possibly will, in effect, may not translate into profitability, but at the same time, it might help us acquire customers, and it might help us, sustain certain services and also reduce cost for the government.
Mr. Kanwal, tell me something about the partnerships. Most of the banks, like, Mr. Venkatramu also spoke about the fintech partnerships. Most of the banks are going aggressively partnering with the fintechs, e-commerce companies. How do you see that model is shaping up? And after specifically the Skyfall, every bank has realized that partnership is going to play a major role. And I see, in fact, banks even partnering with Zomato and Swiggy. So how do you see, this partnership shaping up?
So, Amol, these partnerships were prominent even before the crisis. They become very relevant after the crisis too. And I think clearly what I think has happened really is post the crisis, the partnership for a fintech or several other organizations who are trying to intermediate has become even more important here. Because the whole idea of getting capital and getting liquidity, we have seen in tough times, is very difficult for smaller organizations. So I think if you are a small or a mid-sized organization who has seen the last 6 months, while you have got through it, you certainly have thought about saying, can I handle the next one more easily? So you really want to shift some of your business to a bank so that that amount of capital and liquidity and resultant profitability at least is intact. So I think that is a move that I have seen post-COVID in a lot of organizations. I think fintechs is a great place for banks to supplement. Sometimes it is the technology, sometimes it is a geographical spread, sometimes it is segment they're addressing, and sometimes it is a risk that models they have. So they have many things that banks would probably have at some point of time, but you don't have it today. Certainly for us, we're 2.5 years in banking. we have not developed every model that we possibly would want. And there is no harm in really sharing that with successful fintechs and or MFIs or NBFCs as as they need the same too in terms of getting a capital and getting balance liquidity and certainly a dependable partner they can work with. So the name of the game is going to be partnerships. Partnerships will be of various kinds. And all of us are digitally sound now. We have enough APIs going all over. And I'm sure this whole flurry of partnerships will only make the industry get bigger.
Right. So before I wrap up, then one quick question to all of you. And again, I will start with you only, Mr. Kanwal. We have dealt, I think most of the BFSI companies dealt with Skyfall, I would say, very well in the last 8 months. By any chance, let's hope that there won't be any another Skyfall. But let's hypothetical think that another pandemic, another Skyfall is awaiting for us. Are you ready?
Listen, nobody can be ready for a pandemic, honestly, and nobody would wish one. But have you learned from this pandemic? Yes. Clearly, wherever we have weaknesses, and everybody in every organization has weaknesses, I think the pandemic has taught us what they are. I'm sure we'll all try and cement them stronger for the next crisis, so to say. I do think, while we all talk in business terms, the challenge it has on employees and human life is a lot. I mean, we all compliment our frontline staff, and our frontline staff was, doing CSR activities, distributing food, helping the police, giving them all kind of canopies, etc. But every time they did that, they were taking a risk, and many fell sick, and a couple of them didn't make it. You feel really bad about it. So I think while we do compliment our employees and we have all taken personal risk, I do wish there is no more pandemic because frankly, the cost to human life is too much.
I completely echo what Ajay said, completely and totally. So let me just take it from a different point of view, not the pandemic, but another crisis, right? And yes, the country has recovered from demonetization, has recovered from the IL&FS related crisis, various defaults of banks, and now this. I am sure that our manpower, our youth, our next generation is more than ready to handle whatever the next crisis is. Nobody hopes for a crisis, certainly not a pandemic. But I think we have learned to learn and take the learnings out of a crisis and being that much stronger to deal with the next crisis. That is as far as the company is concerned. And I couldn't agree with Ajay more personally as people. I think we are more aware of each other as people, right? We used to think of each other as perhaps factors of production. And I think that has changed drastically. It has taught us humility as different from modesty. Modesty, we always talk, "Arey, main kuch nahi hu." But truthfully, it has taught us humility to understand that, as prepared as you are, with one stroke, life can change and life can change irreversibly.
I think I would, definitely not take much time, but then I agree with, whatever has been said about crisis. But crisis after crisis, I think we've been learning, and then there's been an element of resilience that we've seen over past. I think we've always, come out and we've learned, and at the same time, there's been some good things that have happened, and it has taken, some new direction. Hopefully, we're all prepared. I think from a preparedness standpoint, probably any crisis we can handle. I would put it that way.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Venkatramu, for that comment. Thank you so much for being on the ET-BFS ICXO Conclave panel and sharing your views. Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists, for putting your points so precisely. Now we'll move on to the next session. Before that, let's take a short break and visit the expo area. Stay tuned.